The staff knew him only as the kind-hearted young man. Kim Tae-hyung kept his identity hidden while spending time with the children, until a little girl started singing his song. That's when BTS V's true face was revealed. Welcome to the human stories. Before we dive into this heartwarming story about hidden kindness and the power of music to connect hearts, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today, and if you believe that real celebrities use their fame to help others quietly, hit that subscribe button. This story will show you what true stardom really looks like. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m., a young man in a simple black face mask and baseball cap would quietly enter the Seoul Children's Home through the side entrance. The staff had grown accustomed to his presence over the past 6 months, though they knew remarkably little about their most dedicated volunteer. He gave his name as Tae, spoke softly in polite Korean, and had an almost magical way with the children. Unlike many volunteers who came with good intentions but left after a few visits, Tae never missed his scheduled days. He arrived precisely on time, stayed for exactly 3 hours, and left as quietly as he had come. Director Park Min-jung watched him through her office window as he sat cross-legged on the playroom floor, surrounded by a circle of eager children aged 5 to 12. His voice was gentle as he read them stories, his patience endless as he helped with homework, and his creativity boundless when it came to games and activities. "Who is he really?" asked Mrs. Kim, the head caregiver, joining Director Park at the window. "6 months, and we still know nothing about him except that he's good with children." "He passed all our background checks," Director Park replied, though she shared Mrs. Kim's curiosity. "Sometimes I think he might be a psychology student doing research, but he never takes notes or asks clinical questions. He just loves them." It was true. Tae had a natural warmth that drew children like flowers to sunlight. The shy ones opened up to him, the energetic ones calmed down around him, and even the most troubled children seemed to find peace in his presence. What the staff didn't know was that Kim Tae-hyung, better known to the world as V from BTS, had been seeking exactly this kind of peace for months. The life of a global superstar was something Tae had never quite adjusted to, even after years of unprecedented success. BTS had conquered the world, breaking barriers and setting records that seemed impossible for a Korean boy band. But with fame came isolation, carefully controlled schedules, and the constant weight of millions of expectations. The Seoul Children's Home had become his sanctuary, the one place where he could simply be human. Here, he wasn't V from BTS, the visual of the group, or the idol whose every movement was analyzed by fans and media. He was just Tae, a young man who liked to make children smile. He discovered the children's home by accident during a late-night drive when he couldn't sleep. The building had looked warm and welcoming despite the hour, and when he'd researched it online, he'd learned about their need for volunteers. The decision to help had been impulsive. The decision to keep it secret had been instinctive. "Tae oppa," 7-year-old Minji called out as he entered the playroom. "You're here. I've been waiting all day." Tae's heart melted, as it did every time. These children had no idea who he was, and their affection was pure, untainted by fame or expectation. To them he was simply someone who cared enough to show up. "Have you been practicing your reading?" he asked, settling down beside her. "Yes, I can read 3 whole pages now." Minji proudly held up a picture book. "Will you listen?" As Minji began to read, stumbling over some words but determined to continue, Tae felt the familiar peace wash over him. This was real. This mattered in a way that album sales and chart positions never could. The Seoul Children's Home housed 43 children ranging from toddlers to teenagers. Some were true orphans, others had been surrendered by families who couldn't care for them, and a few were in temporary care while family situations were resolved. What they all shared was a hunger for attention, affection, and stability. Tae had quickly learned each child's story, their preferences, their fears, and their dreams. 10-year-old Jihoon wanted to be a soccer player but was too shy to try out for teams. 8-year-old Sumin had nightmares about the accident that had taken her parents. 12-year-old Donghyun pretended to be tough but secretly loved when Tae helped him with his art projects. "Taehyung," Donghyun asked during one art session, "do you have any brothers or sisters?" Tae paused in his painting, thinking of his 6 bandmates. "I have 6 brothers," he said truthfully. "We're very close." "That must be nice," Donghyun said wistfully. "I wish I had brothers." "You do," Tae replied, gesturing around the room. "Everyone here is your brother or sister. Family isn't always about blood." It was advice he'd learned from his own experience with BTS, but it felt even more meaningful here among children who were building their own chosen family. The sessions followed a gentle routine. Tae would arrive and immediately be swarmed by excited children. They'd spend time on homework, then creative activities, drawing, simple crafts, storytelling. But the children's favorite time was always the last hour, when Tae would sit with them in a circle, and they'd talk about their days, their dreams, or anything that came to mind. As months passed, Tae became more than just a volunteer to the children. He became their anchor. They looked forward to Tae days with the excitement other children reserved for holidays. When he was away for what they didn't know were BTS commitments, they'd ask the staff repeatedly when their favorite volunteer would return. "He's special," Director Park confided to her assistant. "I've been running this place for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone connect with children the way he does. It's like he understands what they need before they know it themselves." Mrs. Kim nodded in agreement. And he never seeks recognition. Most volunteers want photos for their social media or certificates for their resumes. Tae just wants to help. The children had begun to open up in ways that surprised the professional staff. Quiet children found their voices, troubled children found peace, and all of them found hope in the consistency of Tae's presence. During one particularly meaningful session, 5-year-old Yuna, who had been at the home since infancy and rarely spoke, whispered to Tae, "I love you, oppa." Tae felt tears prick his eyes behind his mask. In all his years of performing for crowds of thousands, no words had ever meant more to him than those 4 simple words from a little girl who had chosen to trust him with her heart. Music had always been Tae's first language, even before he'd learned to express himself through performance. At the children's home, he was careful to avoid anything that might reveal his identity, but he couldn't completely suppress his musical nature. During story time, he naturally fell into rhythmic patterns. When the children were restless, he'd hum soft melodies to calm them. And sometimes, when a child was particularly sad or scared, he'd quietly sing simple lullabies or children's songs. "You have a beautiful voice," Mrs. Kim commented one day after overhearing him sing to a crying toddler. "Have you ever considered music professionally?" Tae smiled behind his mask. "Music is just something I love," he said diplomatically. The children began to associate comfort with his voice. When nightmares struck during the times he wasn't there, staff members reported that children would ask them to sing like Tae oppa to help them feel better. One Thursday afternoon, Tae noticed that 12-year-old Haewon, usually one of the more outgoing children, was sitting alone and looking dejected. "What's wrong, Haewon?" Tae asked, settling beside her. "Today was adoption day," she said quietly. 3 families came to meet children. Nobody wanted to meet me. Tae's heart ached. Older children were often overlooked by prospective families who preferred younger ones. "That doesn't mean anything is wrong with you," he said gently. "It just means your family hasn't found you yet. But what if they never do? What if I'm here forever?" Tae thought carefully about his words. Sometimes the most special people have to wait longer for their perfect match. "You're not just any child, Haewon. You're extraordinary. Your family will be extraordinary too, and they'll know how lucky they are when they find you." It was a typical Thursday afternoon in late autumn when everything changed. Tae was sitting with a group of 8 children, helping them with an art project, when 10-year-old Seohyung began humming a melody that made his blood freeze. "Spring Day," one of BTS's most beloved songs. "That's a pretty song," Tae said carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. "Where did you learn it?" "It's by BTS," Seohyung said excitedly. "They're the best group in the whole world. Do you know them, Tae oppa?" Several other children joined the conversation, their faces lighting up with enthusiasm. "I love V the most," 8-year-old Minho declared. "He's so handsome and his voice is like an angel." "No, Jimin is the best," argued Sumin. "RM is the coolest because he speaks English," countered Jihoon. Tae sat frozen as the children debated the merits of each BTS member, their innocent love for the group both warming his heart and terrifying him. He'd been so careful for 6 months, and now they were unknowingly talking about him right to his face. "Tae oppa, who's your favorite?" Minji asked innocently. I think they're all talented," Tae managed. "But you have to pick one," Seohyung insisted. "If you met them, which one would you want to be friends with?" Before Tae could answer, Haewon, who had been quietly working on her drawing, began to sing softly. Not just humming, singing with clear sweet words. "I'm just walking and walking among this cloudy darkness." It was spring day, and her voice was pure and beautiful. But what made Tae's heart stop wasn't her singing, it was the way she was looking at him as she sang, her eyes searching his face as if she were trying to solve a puzzle. "Oppa," Haewon said quietly, stopping mid-song. "Can you take off your mask?" The art room fell silent. Other children looked up from their projects, sensing something important was happening. "Why would you want me to do that?" Tae asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Because," Haewon said slowly, "your eyes look exactly like V's eyes when he sings this song." Tae felt the world shift around him. For 6 months, he'd hidden behind a mask and a simple name, finding peace in anonymity. But now a 12-year-old girl with sharp eyes and a love for BTS was threatening to shatter his carefully constructed secret. "That's silly," Minho said. "Tae oppa can't be V. V is famous. He lives in a big house and goes to concerts." "But look at his eyes," Haewon persisted. "And listen to his voice when he talks. It's the same." Other children began to look more closely at Tae, their innocent faces suddenly curious in a way that made him profoundly uncomfortable. "Haewon," Tae said gently, "sometimes people just look similar to other people." But Haewon was not easily deterred. She pulled out a phone, a basic model provided by the home for emergencies, and with the quick fingers of a digital native, pulled up a BTS video. "Here," she said, holding the phone so others could see. "Watch V in this video, and then look at Tae oppa's eyes." Tae watched in slow-motion horror as 6 innocent children studied his face, comparing it to the phone screen. He could see the exact moment when recognition dawned in each of their expressions. "Oh my God," whispered Seohyung. "Haewon is right." "Tae oppa," Minji said slowly, "are you really V from BTS?" Tae looked around the circle of children, these pure loving souls who had become so important to him, and realized that his moment of choice had arrived. He could deny it, make excuses, perhaps even stop coming to avoid the complications, or he could trust them with the truth. Slowly, with hands that trembled slightly, he reached up and removed his mask. The silence that followed was profound. 7 children stared at the face they'd seen in videos, on posters, in dreams of meeting their idol, now sitting cross-legged on their playroom floor, surrounded by art supplies and the gentle chaos of their daily life.
"Hi," Tae said softly, his voice now unmistakably recognizable without the muffling of the mask. "Yes, I'm V, but I'm also just Tae, your friend who comes here because he loves you all very much." Minho was the first to break. Tears started streaming down his face as he launched himself at Tae for a hug. "You're really here. You're really our friend." The dam burst. Children began crying, laughing, hugging, talking all at once in a tornado of pure emotion. But it wasn't the screaming hysteria of fans at a concert. It was something deeper, more personal. These children weren't excited because they'd met a celebrity. They were overwhelmed because someone they loved had revealed himself to be even more special than they'd known. "But why?" Hwan asked through her tears. "Why did you come here? Why didn't you tell us?" Tae pulled her into his arms, along with several other children who were clinging to him. "Because," he said, his own voice thick with emotion, "this is the only place where I can be myself. Where I'm not V the idol, but just Tae who loves children and wants to help. You've all given me something I can't get anywhere else. The chance to be human. Will you stop coming now?" Little Yuna asked fearfully. "Now that we know, do you want me to stop coming?" Tae asked. A chorus of no filled the room. "Then I won't stop," Tae promised. "But I need you all to be my secret keepers. Can you do that? Can you keep this between us?" "But why?" Jihoon asked. "Aren't you proud to help us?" Tae chose his words carefully. "I'm very proud to know all of you. But if other people find out I come here, it won't be our special place anymore. There will be cameras and reporters and crowds. And then I won't be able to spend quiet time with you. I won't be able to help with homework or listen to your stories or just be your friend." The children understood with the quick intuition that kids possess. Their haven would be invaded. Their special relationship with Tae would become public property. And they would lose the thing they treasured most, his undivided attention and genuine care.
"We won't tell anyone," Hae-won declared solemnly. "This is our secret." "Promise?" Tae asked. "Promise," they chorused.
Over the following weeks, something beautiful happened. Knowing Tae's true identity somehow made the children love him even more, but not because he was famous, because he had chosen them. Out of all the places in the world he could be, all the important people he could spend time with, he chose to sit on their playroom floor and care about their small problems and big dreams. The dynamic shifted in subtle ways. The children became fiercely protective of their secret, creating an elaborate system of code words and signals for the rare occasions when other volunteers or visitors were present during Tae's visits. "Our special friend is here," became the phrase that meant Tae had arrived. Time for music meant it was safe for him to remove his mask. Homework time was the signal that he needed to put his mask back on. Mrs. Kim and Director Park noticed the change in the children's behavior. They seemed more confident, more secure, glowing with a secret joy they couldn't quite explain. But they attributed it to the continued presence of their beloved volunteer. Never suspecting the truth, Tae, for his part, found an even deeper peace in his visits. No longer having to carefully monitor every word and gesture for potential reveals, he could relax completely. He sang more freely, shared more stories, and allowed his natural personality to shine through. The secret held for 2 months until an unexpected challenge arose. A local television station had decided to do a feature story on the Seoul Children's Home, highlighting their excellent programs and dedicated volunteers. Director Park was thrilled by the positive attention, but Tae panicked when she mentioned it during one of his visits. "They want to film some of our regular volunteers working with the children," she explained to the gathered staff and volunteers. "It would be wonderful publicity for our funding efforts." Tae's mind raced. He couldn't appear on television, but he also couldn't suddenly stop volunteering without raising suspicions. "I'm very camera shy," he told Director Park. "Could I perhaps help in other ways during the filming?" "Of course," she said kindly. "We never require anyone to appear on camera if they're uncomfortable." But the children, overhearing this conversation, immediately understood the real problem. That evening, Hae-won approached Director Park with a carefully rehearsed speech. "Director Park," she said formally, "we don't want our special volunteers on TV. Oppa is very private, and if he's on television, he might stop coming. We love our volunteers just the way they are." Several other children nodded in agreement, backing up Hae-won's statement with the solidarity that Director Park had come to expect from them. "We don't need to be on TV," So-young added. "We just need Oppa to keep coming." Director Park was touched by the children's loyalty to their favorite volunteer. "All right," she agreed. "We'll film other activities, and just mention that we have wonderful volunteers who prefer to stay private." The children's protection of their secret had worked, but it also deepened Tae's understanding of how much his presence meant to them. They were willing to forego television exposure, something most children would find exciting, to protect his privacy. As winter turned to spring, Tae's secret visits to the Seoul Children's Home continued to be the highlight of his week. Despite BTS's increasingly demanding schedule, he protected those Tuesday and Thursday afternoons with fierce determination. His bandmates noticed the change in him, a calmness and centeredness that hadn't been there before, but respected his privacy when he declined to explain where he disappeared to twice a week. The children, meanwhile, blossomed under his continued attention. Their grades improved, their behavioral issues decreased, and their general happiness quotient soared. Several adoptions had taken place, including Hae-won, who found a loving family that appreciated her intelligence and spirit. "I'll never forget you, Oppa," she whispered during their goodbye hug. "You taught me that I was worth loving." "You taught me the same thing," Oppa whispered back, meaning every word. New children arrived to take the place of those who found families, and the secret was carefully passed down like a precious inheritance. "We have a special friend who comes to visit," the older children would tell the newcomers. "He's very important, but we keep him safe by keeping his secret." 1 year after his first visit to the Seoul Children's Home, Tae sat in the same playroom where his journey had begun, surrounded by a mix of familiar faces and new arrivals. Some of his original children had found families, others had aged out into independent living programs, but the love remained constant. As he watched the current group of children work on their art projects, he reflected on what this place had given him. He'd come seeking an escape from fame, but he'd found something much more valuable: purpose, genuine connection, and the reminder that the most important work happened away from cameras and crowds. A new volunteer, a college student named Sarah, was struggling with a particularly energetic group of 5-year-olds. Tae watched as the children immediately came to her aid, showing her the games and routines that worked best. "They're wonderful teachers," Sarah commented to Tae during a quiet moment. "They seem to have learned kindness and cooperation from somewhere special." Tae smiled behind his mask. "They learned from each other," he said simply, but he knew the truth was more complex. The children had learned that love could come from unexpected places, that celebrities could be human, that fame didn't preclude genuine caring, and that the most valuable gifts were often given in secret. And Tae had learned that sometimes the greatest performances happen not on stage in front of thousands, but on a playroom floor in front of a handful of children who saw past the celebrity to the heart underneath. The Seoul Children's Home continued to thrive, its children confident and loved, its staff dedicated and caring. And twice a week, a young man in a face mask continued to slip through the side entrance, carrying with him the most precious gift of all, the knowledge that love multiplied when shared, that true worth wasn't measured in album sales or awards, and that sometimes the most important audience was the smallest one. V from BTS might belong to the world, but Tae belonged to those children, and they belonged to him, in a bond that no amount of fame could diminish or destroy. Sometimes the most beautiful stories are the ones that happen in secret, away from cameras and crowds. They remind us that real love is quiet, consistent, and asks for nothing in return except the chance to give. Have you ever given your time to help others without expecting recognition? Have you found peace in serving those who might need it most? Share this story if it reminded you that true stars shine brightest when they're illuminating someone else's darkness. Because the most important performances happen not on stage but in the small quiet moments when we choose to love.